Okay, good morning. My name is Chris Campbell, Senior Marketing Manager for Hughes. We're going to go ahead and get started this morning. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for the brief webinar entitled Best Practices for Using Digital Signage by Universities. We're very fortunate this morning to be joined by Randy Polubiak, who is a digital media and business communication strategist serving companies, including franchise businesses, college campuses, college universities, banks, and other large organizations and government agencies. He is the author of Digital Touchpoints, How to Gain a Competitive Advantage Using Dynamic and Video Media, and has co-authored two industry-specific books as well. And as a special treat this morning, towards the end of this presentation, we will also get the incredible opportunity to hear from Mike Carpenter, who is the AV Administrator for Brigham Young University. He's going to be taking live questions from both Randy and the audience about how he's leveraging digital signage across his own Brigham Young University campus. So with that, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Randy. Randy, go ahead.
Curtis, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I look forward to sharing this time with everyone today and giving you some thoughts and perspectives on digital signage that you may find helpful as you look to implement a digital signage system on your university and campus. I'm also looking forward to the interaction that we have with Mike Carpenter at the end of this, as Curtis mentioned. So I believe that you'll get a very informative session with his contributions. The digital signage is becoming a very interesting and very popular technology and topic. I do want to say before I get into some of this that there is revenue generating and advertising based signage, but there's also digital signage that's more focused on information, news, entertainment, that is applicable to many environments, including campuses. However, keep in mind that advertising based and revenue-generating opportunities certainly do exist. But in this presentation, our primary focus is for the campus environments and the information that would be applicable to it, not necessarily revenue-generating opportunities. The next slide is kind of indicative of what's going on out in the marketplace. And I think it provides a very impressive statement with regards to digital signage, and that is that 63% of people that advertising catches their attention using signage compared to the other modes that we have listed here. For instance, you have the normal broadcast modes and means of radio and television, broadcasting, magazines, billboards. Bottom line of it is digital signage seems to be reaching a good number of people and providing an impact that is very pertinent and relevant to us here today in the enterprise space, enterprise including universities. We're going to touch on four key areas today related to the best practices in digital signage. The first of which is increasing and expanding digital touch points. I'll explain that in just a minute. But then establishing a media business strategy, extremely important when you're dealing with any enterprise visual or video-based communication system. Then content, it's king. It has been king. It's always going to be king. And we'll touch on some key aspects of the content that may be helpful to you. And then we're going to talk about technology. It comes after the other important steps of the media business strategy and the content strategy. Once you know what you want to do, once you know what you need to do, then you're capable of making some determinations on what technology you may use and the roadmap that you would apply and implement. So starting with digital touch points, we have three key bullet points here. I really put a strong emphasis on knowing and reaching your target audience, your internal and external people. What does that mean in a university environment? Well, internal would be students, faculty members, staff members. External would be guests, people who are coming on site for events and or visiting and or prospects that are visiting the site. The key thing to talk about now is that in a little overview, digital display screens are everywhere. We have large screens, and they just keep getting larger. You know, whether it's in a living room or a student environment, or an outside and outdoor screen, the screens are getting larger, but at the same time, we're getting smaller screens, the mobile devices that we carry. The size could be fit in your hand as a phone, or it could be a tablet or other small device that you're using. The bottom line is that everyone is walking around with screens, and screens are in their viewing opportunity range, and they're emphasizing a great deal on the aspect of video, even though it's all visual based, even though it may be text, as we're using here in the webinar. The majority of it, the bottom line of it, the driver of it is video, but at least heavily involved with visual side of it. And back to the mobile devices for a minute, we've now gotten to the point where we've coined a phrase, digital omnivores. Go figure that one. But it's based on the consumption of the content with the digital devices. And digital omnivores are people who have 2 or more devices at one time. So they're literally walking around with 1 or 2 mobile phones and or tablets that they're able to acquire and view and consume the content. The most important thing of it is that it's driving engagement. So whether it's information or it's education or entertainment, it's providing people with the content that's relevant to them, important to them, and with the tools that they're carrying around, they're able to interact and share that content. So the digital touch points aspect of it is reaching your target audiences, again, internal or external, wherever they are with whatever device that they may be using, keeping in mind that they're digital devices, that they are able to access, and you're able to share with them the content that you'd like them to see. The second main title is the media business strategy. This is really something that is similar to what the marketing people would do in any retail organization or any major business, and quite frankly, even in a university environment, you have to reach out and touch people that you're interested in reaching. Again, whether it's your alumni, your students, prospective students, guests, the concept is how would a marketing firm reach these people? What steps would they take? Use the same basic logic in that you have to get to them. You have to know what the message is that you want them to hear, what you want to show to them. You have to know when and where you want to reach them. On a campus environment, it's going to be far different in the academic area than it would be in the athletics facilities or in the lodging areas where the students would, with their dormitories or where they would dine. And then, of course, you need to identify all sources of content, all types of content that you may use. That would be content that you would create yourself on an institutional or departmental basis. It would be third-party content that you may bring in, whether it's entertainment and information. That could be content from a cable TV or satellite television source, third-party content, consumer-based content. It could be weather. It could be other RSS feeds and information it's providing. And as we'll talk a little bit later, it's also a very good tool and relevant to notifications, emergency notifications, and updates that you may have to provide. To do this, it's a matter of getting everyone in the organization on the same page, because you may be distributing content to all points on campus, all types of facilities and departments, and that's going to go across a number of different business units or groups that you'll benefit greatly if you leverage the same infrastructure and the same management capabilities if everyone is involved, and starting with as high up in the organization as possible, whether it's athletics that's driving it or the university in an institutional level, the buy-in at the top at the very beginning with all the other stakeholders and key parties involved is very critical to a successful implementation of your network. We talked briefly, we hit on the idea of the content strategy. This is interesting because bottom line is everyone's becoming a producer these days. It's possible for anybody and everybody to create and provide content. And so the key thing is making it readily available and easily accessible to them. But we want to make sure that we take into account, again, the groups that we've been talking about, students, faculty, staff, guests, the various departments. We want to make sure that we have a good idea and handle on what content could and should be live and what should be on demand, what's going to be video-based and or rich media, text. I mean, graphics can be as powerful and important and relevant as video, and so finding the right balance is very important. It's also important to find out what resources do you need to make sure that you have a well-run, well-orchestrated digital signage network and allocate those resources. This is a time-consuming situation where making sure that all the content is approved, manageable, and or cleared and right before it goes on the network. And that may take a little bit of effort and time from the staff, and so never underestimate the amount of work that it will take. On the other hand, with the technology that's available today, it's very manageable. It's just simply a matter of making sure that they're allocated properly. The last key thing, as we talked about earlier, was then developing the technology roadmap. This is a key part of the business strategy and the funding process. So make sure that's included in the media business strategy. We move to the content strategy and some of the best practices that are applicable there. The important thing, content is king, remember, so we have to make sure that it's relevant, it's fresh, it's timely. It's important, as we mentioned, to say that it's readily available and easily accessible. That includes the people who are making the contribution to the content, as well as the people who are wanting to access the content. And a strategy that's been important throughout the ages is keep the messages short, keep them concise. With social media, we've already experienced that where we have the short 20, 30-minute video clips, we have the short tweets. I will say this, where it's important and the content is relevant, longer programs are definitely acceptable. So make the content and allow the content to drive the length of the message, but on digital signage, the model is typically keep it as short as possible so that you get the people's attention. Use it possibly to direct them to other media devices. We'll talk about that a little bit later, so that we have a tie-in to the use of all media that may be in the ecosystem and all means that people may be using to receive and view the content. And use all of the media that's available to you. Find the right mix. What I mean by that is go to the desktop, go to the large screens, the kiosks, the mobile devices, any distribution channel that is possible, any screen that is available and possible to you where your particular audiences and viewers may be interested in viewing it. And leverage all content across all viable audiences. What does that mean? Well, if you make something for the students, but it could also be relevant to faculty and staff, make sure that it reaches them in their unique environments where they may be viewing the content. You're essentially leveraging and multi-purposing the content for these various and multiple viewing locations. As mentioned, be prepared to feed the beast. There will be a thirst for the content, and to keep it fresh and available to people, they're going to want more. So make sure that you have the right systems to create and acquire the content. Differentiate between institutional and departmental content. Again, it might be messages that comes from the university level on down for everybody, but on a departmental basis, such as athletics and academics, they're going to want unique information or content that's unique to them. You also have wayfinding. especially for guests, but in many cases, students and staff, they would like to find their way around campus and to things that they may need to find. And emergency notifications, critical information. We're finding out today whether it's a weather incident and hazard that you need to notify people that heavy snow is coming and school may be closed for a day. We're also finding a good number of occasions where incidents happen on campus and students and faculty would like to hear about it before they may hear about it on the national or local media broadcasts. Identify the best zone configuration that's relevant to each screen, each target audience. So you may have a different configuration in each respective facility. This example shows where we're including the time and the weather. We have a news feed, little countdown widget that's included in there. In the large window to the right, we have video, and it may be that that video may be a live event, a live feed, or it may in fact be something just as simple as graphics and schedules and updates that are taking place. And of course, we have the logo there. Get your branding included whenever, wherever possible. But the technology roadmap side of it, now we're into the stuff where this usually is the exciting stuff, the sexy stuff that gets people motivated. They want to know what type of screens that they may use. Make sure that you're looking at your whole infrastructure, you have the right media creation tools and management capabilities, and you're also taking into account your distribution channels. You may work with a broadcast system where every site, every screen gets the feed from the head end, or you may segment it and group and tier it to where there are little media devices at some or all of the screens, and you're able to control and dictate what content plays from those devices on those specific screens at any given time. Mike is going to talk about that a little bit later. And then, of course, if you want to allow local contribution using something such as USB sticks, where maybe in a lodging area, I'm trying to think of the word, I'm sorry about that, dormitory, where students may be allowed to input content for their specific dormitory and residence. You may consider interactive touch screens, and again, make sure you leverage personal devices that could be able to interact with your digital signage system. And with today's technology, things have become so sophisticated, and with automated capabilities built into it, make sure that as much automation as possible is built into the system and the workflows. This will help keep a manageable number of staff having to feed the beast, but also allow them to do things that over time will be able to improve and significantly increase the amount of content in ways that you're providing the content, excuse me. This is basically my last slide. The idea here is to, again, leverage the entire video ecosystem. You see where the screens across the top are different types of screens, desktops, laptops, large flat screens, and they're featuring the video portion of the content and or the full screen with the different zones in it. But the screens on the bottom are programmed to only feed what's being fed on zone 2 to the various desktops and things. This is just a good example as to how different content can be directed toward the specific and the authorized screens. So the thoughts being is, as I'll close out my part of the presentation, is the intent is to leverage and use digital signage wherever possible, getting to all screens, large and small, to enhance and increase the digital touch points that you're making with your respective audience members, whether they're internal or the external. And I think I'll say is that today these systems have become extremely affordable compared to years ago as the cost of screens have come down, and as the systems that manage them have become more robust, they've also become more affordable. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mike Carpenter. As Curtis indicated, he's the person responsible for the AV system at Brigham Young University. And we welcome you today, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. We excited to hear the things you're saying, things we've been working on at BYU. It's fun to see other people are thinking the same things.
Yes, very good. So, yes, kick it off by giving us a little bit of an overview of your network and the things that you're there at BYU.
Sure. So I'm focused on the AV systems in the athletic department. While there are other departments at BYU that have digital signage systems, my focus is in the athletic department and the athletic facilities, where we are providing, using digital signage to provide information to the staff, the student athletes, the visitors of the facilities. You know, these are being used, as you mentioned in your slides, as general information. We provide news, we provide guides, directories, menu boards, different things to these visitors of these facilities. That's the general purpose of the digital signage in these areas.
Perfect.
As a high level, we have, you know, numerous locations around campus that utilize these. We have some areas that have just displays with you know, individual players behind them. On campus, we also use our cable TV, our CATV system. We put players on that, which allows us to distribute digital signage content on channels that can be seen in hundreds of locations, including offices or anywhere there's a cable TV. So we do things in a wide variety of ways to provide information to different people.
Okay. Oh, perfect. And again, this is Curtis Campbell too. I certainly appreciate the input you've just given us, and Randy, thank you again. I know I have a couple of questions too, and we'll just kind of keep this open and informal. And if there's questions from the audience, also please feel free to ask, and we'll get those addressed if with time permitting. So, one question that tops my list, Mike, is what in your mind is the top lesson learned during the initial media strategy phase? Like when you first thought this, and as you began to roll it out, what would you coin as the top lesson you learned?
You know, I think that the best thing you can do is to get an understanding of the purpose and the goals that your digital signage is intended to be used for. I think you have to get the highest level of your management of whatever group that you're going to be working with to support that and to make sure that it encompasses the entire group. And I think that's probably the most critical thing.
And do you have any insight as to maybe how you gained executive sponsor support? Like, for example, if your management team wasn't necessarily believing in this, I know this is somewhat. I don't want to curveball the question, but can you think of something that maybe helped overcome one of those obstacles?
You know, I think the biggest thing is we saw that, you know, just even in athletics, you got multiple teams, multiple groups, and as we saw that, you know, we wanted to utilize the systems, I think that it was just by seeing that, you know, kind of learning the hard way a little bit, is to make digital signage successful, we just had to make sure we had an understanding of what the goal was. I think the immediate goal at BYU was we had people putting flyers, you know, printed on paper everywhere with information of events or, you know, notices of things people needed to be doing. And the original goal was, well, if we want to get rid of all these flyers and all this information, we need to make sure we have a digital signage system that works. And I think that was one of the driving factors for us to kind of get things consolidated up front.
So this is Randy again, that was probably then a cost-effective thing, but also getting rid of the clutter and getting more concise messaging vehicles available for you then.
Exactly. One of the concerns we had from our management is, I think the thing is we wanted to make sure we had, the only thing worse than having no digital signage was going to be having bad digital signage, not keeping it updated. Whose responsibility was it? And so we made sure that we had to have a support plan in place to keep that content up to date. And what we made sure we did is before we turned on any sign, any particular content, we made sure there was a staff member that's assigned as part of their job to make sure that's their job to keep that up to date. And that way we didn't just have these signs that were out there that weren't up to date. And we made sure that was part of it, that they were going to be responsible to keep the content, the graphics, everything fresh. And that's, it maybe slows down some things, but it made sure that we were ready for it as the sign was turned on.
Very good. So let me ask you this, Mike. I mean, you're in a pretty interesting, exciting field of it to begin with, being in the athletics department. There's a lot of passion for pretty much everybody on campus and alumni. What are you finding to be some of the content types and sources that are absolutely proving to be invaluable to your viewers?
There's, we make sure that, there's a couple of different areas. You've got just the general signs that are outside the elevators in the hallways and certain areas that have information, directions, things that the athletes or people need to know. Those are there. We've been pretty good really good. We have some really good graphic and people that are assigned to those boards, and they make sure they put sport highlights on, which actually captures people's attention. But then there's the other information coming on the screen, either with RSS feeds or other information around that gives them things. I think that, those have been very successful. Those are the ones that replaced all the notices. I think in some of the areas where the nutrition areas are all going to be menu boards that are on digital signs that the students can come in and make their selections, or the athletes can come in and see what on the menu or the selections they can make. It's just been good to see people grasp onto how the digital signage can help help the overall experience for the people in the buildings.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. I guess another question I have for you then, again, this is Curtis. How from a best practice standpoint, how is content managed across your digital signage network? Is it central? Is it per building? I mean, how are you managing that content?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, some of them have the individual players behind them. Like in an area where that's the only sign, where they need to be largely distributed across multiple buildings, maybe the same sign. And because there are potentially anywhere there's a cable TV drop, that could be a location that digital sign needs to be seen. We put those onto a player, which then goes into, let's say, what's a cable TV system is modulated and put onto channels. And then, all the players are remotely, you manage those players remotely, but the distribution of it is what I think makes it helpful for us. I mean, you've got a wide variety of opportunities with the players and such today.
Very good. So this is Randy. So let's move out a little bit in a different direction. We talked about what's important internally, getting buy-in and support and the media business strategy side of it. But what about the solution selection part of it, where you're looking for a solution, you're looking for a vendor. Do you have any lessons learned that you could share with us there?
You know, it is critical to find good solutions, and I've found that the best way that we've been able to get good solutions is partner with vendors and or companies that we can trust, and we know that when I need to get something done, I know they'll help me get it done right. And that's probably been my biggest lesson learned is, you know, partnering with the right people.
Okay. And this is Curtis. Kind of maybe a follow-up to a question I asked a few minutes ago is, you know, BYU, I mean, I've had the opportunity to go down and see some of the signs that exist on campus, given that it's here locally. And so one question I have is, it appears that you have great buy-in and support from the athletic department for digital signage. I mean, I believe that I heard recently that you're going to be expanding that digital signage network across 2 additional sports venues. So, you know, how have you done that, and any thoughts or recommendations you have in that area would be great.
So what? I'm sorry. What you want to know? What support we have?
No, sorry, it's a long-winded question. I apologize. You know, you appear to have great buy-in, and what are some of your thoughts or recommendations about how to secure additional buy-in for maybe new teams? You know, if you were to maybe looking for a new venue to put signage in, you know, how are you getting that buy-in and support?
Oh yeah. We do have excellent support, and I think the main thing is that things are always changing. The areas we have systems in now and the new opportunities is just to be flexible and work with those groups. And I think, like we mentioned up front, is the most important thing is to sit down and figure out what the purpose, what they're trying to do, and be flexible enough to try to come up with those answers before you move forward, and just be flexible to work with all the different groups to support all the different events and needs that are out there.
Very good.
Okay,
so this may be my last question for you. We're running late on time, and Curtis, of course, will kick me on that if I go over exceed it. But briefly, Mike, could you give us an idea of the number of screens that you have, and if you have a plan to expand it exponentially, as well as the number of people that are managing, supporting the content?
Yes, I mean currently there are, you know, numerous just individual signs, like I mentioned. Our the actual cable TV goes to several hundred TVs, you know, and that is looking to expand with our a lot of our food services, our concession stands, all that. There's, you know, we were trying to figure out how to do that in a lot of the venues. I mean, the number of digital signs is just the ticketing areas. Everybody is getting on board, wanting to add more and more signs. And, you know, so the thing we're doing, though, is, like I mentioned earlier, is just trying to make sure there's a plan in place before we just roll them out. I think but it's just growing, like I said, from ticketing, food service, concessions, all the different areas are all wanting to put more and more signs just for information and directions.
Very good. One last comment then. The question is are there any final thoughts and recommendations you may be able to provide or want to provide for someone who's considering implementing a university-wide digital signage system?
Just work with your management and your different department representatives that are needing the information, and just work closely with them to get that plan and that direction in place before you start working on it, before you start implementing it.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's very helpful, Mike. I do have one quick question that I just want to follow up on, and that is you know, a lot of these screens, a lot of these screens that we're seeing deployed, not necessarily at BYU, but just in general, have the capabilities to handle emergency notifications. Correct me if I'm wrong, you're not actively using that now, but is there a plan to implement that in the future?
You know, I don't think at this time there is an emergency notification systems on campus. The digital signage is not currently part of that, and I don't have any current plans to have that integrated at this time. You know, the other notification systems are in place, but not part of the digital signage that I'm working on.
No, that's fine, and I guess that's a good thing that you don't have a plan to do that, because that means it's a safe campus, I guess. No, I'm saying that slightly tongue in cheek, so no, I appreciate that. But okay, well, perfect. Well, Randy, your questions were great, and Mike, thank you so much for your feedback. We have exhausted the window that we have set aside for this morning, so we'll go ahead and conclude. Just by way of housekeeping, this webinar has been recorded and can be made available to anyone who would like to access it. So, but those who registered will receive an audio link to where they can download it to share with anyone else they so choose. So, again, thank you all for joining us this morning. We certainly appreciate it, and we look forward to working with you in any way or shape that we get an opportunity to do so. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye bye now.